Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Gnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here we are seeing the description was given that how the great sage Kardama Muni was sitting in trance, and the sun was setting, it was twilight, it was getting darker, evening, and after offering his oblations in the sacrifices, he was sitting in, Kashyapa Muni was sitting in trance. Then Diti, she is saying, O learned one, Cupid is taking his arrows and distressing me forcibly, as a mad elephant troubles a banana tree. So she is speaking to her husband, Kashyapa Muni, who is in trance. Prabhupada explains, it was wrong on her part when Kashyapa Muni was sitting in trance to disturb his trance by expressing her desires. So Prabhupada says, beautiful Diti, seeing her husband absorbed in trance, began to speak loudly, not attempting to attract him by bodily expression. She frankly said that her whole body was distressed by sex desire because of her husband's presence. Just as banana tree is troubled by a mad elephant, it was not natural for her to agitate her husband when he was in trance. So it was not natural for her actually when Kashyapa Muni was sitting in trance, absorbed in the Lord. But Prabhupada explains, she could not control her strong sexual appetite. And that is what she is expressing here. Next shloka, she explains that her appetite, which has arisen, is not out of trying to satisfy her material desires. It's not exactly for satisfying this flesh of the body. It is for higher purpose of getting a progeny, of getting a child. And that is what is expressed by her. Tad bhavan dahyamanayam sapatninam samriddhibihi. I am seeing that my other co-wives, they are all having children, and I am feeling very, very poorer because I am not having any child. Prajavati nam bhadram te. Praja means to have offsprings, children. Therefore, you should be kind towards me by showing me complete mercy. I desire to have sons, and I am much distressed by seeing the opulence of my co-wives. So, the co-wives, they are all having children, everything is there. I am not having, so I feel very distressed by seeing this position. By performing this act, you will become happy. So she is telling the husband that by begetting child, by getting offspring, you will also become happy because you are Prajapati. You are meant for increasing the population in this world to satisfy the desires of the Lord. Because this world is a place where living entities desire to satisfy their senses. So to satisfy those living entities, the Lord makes an arrangement through these Prajapatis. So these great personalities, they increase the population in this world to give chance to those living entities who want to enjoy, who have a desire to enjoy. So she is saying that's why you will become happy by following the orders of Brahmaji, by following the orders of the Supreme Lord to increase population. So that's what Prabhupada is explaining. Bhagavad Gita explains very clearly that for intercourse, for begetting a child is righteous, it is religious. Krishna says that in Bhagavad Gita, Dharma aviruddho kamo asmi. I am that lust which is not against religious principles. The natural result of lust is to beget a child. Actually, that is how the living entity is created. The Lord has designed this body in such a way that in that natural phenomenon there is some kind of pleasure involved. Because if there is no pleasure, nobody will be interested. Imagine if there was no pleasure at all. Anybody would like to take responsibility. I have to take a burden of my children, I have to take a burden of my wife, I have to take burden of whole family. Nobody will be interested. Isn't it? So naturally, there is sensual pleasure involved in that. But that, when it is meant, when the goal is to beget a Krishna conscious child, that Krishna says is not against the religious principle. But those sexual intercourses which are meant only for sense gratification, that is not righteous. That is not religious. That is irreligion. So here we find Prabhupada is explaining, therefore, Diti's appeal to her husband to beget a child is not irreligious. It is religious. Similarly, Prabhupada is saying, therefore, Kashyapa was supposed to satisfy his bona fide wife. In that act of religion, Kashyapa Muni was supposed to satisfy the wife to beget a child in her. So, this is what is explained here. Chaitanya Charitamrita actually very nicely explains about the difference between lust and love. Actually, in the spiritual world, everything is centered around Krishna. Krishna is the center, and all living entities in the spiritual world, everything is centered around giving pleasure to Krishna. And that is called as love. In few days back conversation, when we were reading, not conversation, I think I quoted one conversation of Prabhupada, where one reporter, he came to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was describing, if human life is not utilized properly, then there is good chance that in the next life we will become animals. So the reporter, he could not understand it properly, or maybe probably he could not understand it, or knowingly he wrote one article, Hare Krishna movement Swami says he is going to become animal in the next life. So he misrepresented, probably he could not understand. So next day when Prabhupada was giving the class, Prabhupada smiled, and Prabhupada was again talking about that we should use this human life properly, because if we don't utilize this human life properly, we will glide down to the lower species of life to become animals. Actually, it's a very simple principle. Like, suppose you are working in some company and you are highly placed. If you don't utilize your post properly, what will happen? The company will promote you or depromote you. They will depromote us. We will not be promoted. Similarly, in the cycle of evolution, if we don't use this evolved human form of life properly to advance further, then what will be the result? We will be depromoted to lower consciousness of life. The consciousness of animal is lower. Our consciousness is higher. We are supposed to go more higher. We are supposed to evolve more. If we don't, then we will be depromoted to lower consciousness. Then Prabhupada said, but we are not afraid to become animals, provided we get an opportunity to serve Krishna. Because in spiritual world, in spiritual life, even animals' consciousness is highly evolved. Just like in Vrindavan, if you see, in the spiritual world, if you see, whether Krishna is embracing one gopi, or Krishna is embracing one cow, Krishna is embracing one deer, it does not matter. Because there in the spiritual world, everyone's consciousness is Krishna consciousness. That is the difference. What is the difference between material world and spiritual world? Here, we want to satisfy our desire. Spiritual world, everyone wants to satisfy Krishna's desire. Here, everyone wants to satisfy their own desire. Even when we say, I love somebody, it is primarily based upon satisfying my desire. That's how we find that sometimes we say, I love you, she loves me, isn't it? But later on, just like sometimes I quote one of the incidents which happened in my college life when I had joined Krishna consciousness in Bangalore. There was a couple in St. Joseph's College in Bangalore who were very famous. Now also we find sometimes in the colleges some very famous unmarried couples going around, isn't it? So there was one very famous couple, always practically you can see them always together. It was like that. Anywhere, practically you cannot find them alone. It was like that. And naturally, afterward they got married. And by the time, that was nearly when I was in my second year. And second year, then I finished my third year, and immediately after that I had joined as a full-time devotee. And I was shaved up, you see. And then I joined the temple. And then once those couple, they happened to come to the temple. They had already got married by that time. So they happened to, that was around I think 3-4 years after I had joined. So after that they happened to come to the temple, and we used to have one lecture hall where we used to do the preaching. Any visitors come to the temple and we would preach to them. So the moment I saw them, I was able to recognize because they were very popular as a couple going around like that. And probably because I was not some popular person in the college, they were not able to recognize me. Moreover, I was shaved up, not with hairs and others, so it was not possible for them also to recognize me like that. So I was talking to them, and they were relating that how the boy was saying that, Swamiji, if you can help us, we are practically on a verge of divorce. I was shocked to hear that, and because nobody can imagine. I was thinking that how they're all practically, you cannot imagine them moving separately itself. And the husband was relating, when I was in love with her, the moment she used to talk, it used to look like sweet sound of a cuckoo. Now whenever she talks, it looks like crow. You see how the thing changes. So, just to understand that actually in the material world, when she was able to satisfy my desires, then I love her. Or when he is able to satisfy my desires, she loves me. Otherwise, the moment we find so many faults are there, now I am seeing that actually he is not able to satisfy any more my desires, or she is not able to satisfy my desires, then divorce. Isn't it? This means what? Actually there is no love. It is only lust. This is the meaning of lust. What is the difference between love and lust? In the spiritual world, everyone wants to satisfy desires of Krishna, irrespective of me getting distressed. Even if I have to get distressed, does not matter. But Krishna should be satisfied. That is actually called love. Here, the moment I get distressed, I am not satisfied, I no more love you. Isn't it? This is called lust. So, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains this very wonderfully. It's very simple definition of love and lust. Krishnendriya Priti Vancha. If our work is meant for satisfying the desires of Krishna, that is called as love. Atmendriya Priti. If we want to satisfy our own desires, that is called as Kam, lust. So, Prem and Kam, love and lust. These are two different things. The difference between them is explained like the difference between gold and iron. Iron may be coated like a gold. It may look like gold, but it is never gold. Lust may look like love, but it is never love. There is a lot of difference. So, I'll give you one example to make us understand about how love is different from lust. Prabhupada gives this example of gopis. Once, Narada Muni wanted to know the great love of gopis for Krishna. So Krishna said, okay, do one thing, I will give you practical demonstration. You go to some brahmanas, they are also chanting my names, they are performing yagnas, they are chanting mantras. And when you go to them, you tell them, Krishna is having headache. His head is aching and he wants a special balm. Just like when we get a headache, what do? We apply some Vicks, we apply some balm. So Krishna said, I don't want ordinary balm. You tell them, my headache will be relieved only if they give dust from their feet and rub on my head. Then my headache will be relieved. So Narada said, okay, I will do this. So Narada went to the Brahmanas. They were very happy to receive Narada. They asked about the Lord, everything. And when Narada revealed the Lord is having headache, so they were also worried. And they said, how it can be relieved? So Narada said, is it possible for you to give dust of your feet? I will apply that on the head of the Lord, and then his headache will be relieved. So they all became very angry. They said, what do you think? You want us to go to hell? If we apply dust from our feet on the head of Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna, you think what will be our future? We will all be residing in hell. Do you want us to suffer in hell? We can never do this. So they rejected. Then Narada went back to the Lord. He said, yes, I could understand. They have no love for you, actually. Officially, they are worshipping you. But that love is not there. Then Krishna said, now you do one thing. You go to Vrindavan. You go to the gopis and ask them the same thing. So Narada went and told to the gopis that Krishna is having headache. Immediately they were distressed so much. They became very anxious. How to relieve the headache? Just like sometimes you will find when the mother comes to know her child, let us say, has come up with some kind of difficulty, you can just imagine how mad mother will become. Correct? We would have all seen, we are all, sons of some mother. And when we were distressed, or when, let us say, we met with some accident or something, the mother or father, they become completely mad practically. So that much anxiousness the gopis were having for Krishna, and they were thinking of how to, get his headache relieved. So they asked Narad Muni, so can you tell us how it is possible to relieve his headache? So then Narad Muni said, yes, if it is possible for you to give the dust of your feet and apply on the head of Krishna, it is possible Krishna's headache will be relieved. But then you should also understand, if you apply your dust on the feet of Krishna, according to the Vedic scripture, you are liable to be punished and go and rot in the hellish life. So they said, don't worry Narada, let us go and rot in hellish life. We don't bother about that. Don't delay anymore. Take as much dust as you want and please go and relieve the headache of Krishna. This is called love. They are ready to take distress on themselves, but they want to satisfy Krishna. So this is the difference between love and lust. What happens here in the material world is, actually in the spiritual world, it is only love for Krishna. But because of our independence, we want to, the moment we get the desire in the spiritual world, I don't want to serve Krishna, I want to satisfy myself. Then what happens? Immediately we are in material world. We are sent to the material world. Okay, you go and desire, you go and satisfy your lusty desire. It's very simple to understand why we are sent to the material world. When we are all citizens, we are all law-abiding citizens, right? We all want to follow the government's laws. The moment we say, I don't want to follow, when red light comes, I will break that law. I will move my vehicle. Yes. It is said we should drive on the left hand side, I will drive on the right hand side. Then what will happen? We will be disturbing all other people, all other citizens. So what the government will do for our good and for others' good, for our good and for others' good, they will segregate us, put us behind the bars, because we are disturbing other people. Similar thing happens in the spiritual world. Their spiritual world consciousness is everyone wants to satisfy Krishna, that supreme government. The moment we think, no, I don't want to satisfy him, I want to satisfy my desires, immediately we come to this prison house, behind the bars. This material world is like a prison house. So we come to this material world to satisfy our desire. Actually, when the government is sending us to the prison house, they are also thinking when he will come out of the prison house. Not that we are condemned in the prison house forever. Similarly, even though we have come to this material world, there is a method to rectify our disease. The lust, the anger, the greed, these are the enemies which are binding us in this material world. Just like Prabhupada gives the example that once Prabhupada was invited in one of the prisons, I think it was somewhere in Kanpur. Prabhupada was invited in one prison to give lectures to the prisoners so that they can be rectified. So there Prabhupada said he saw different kinds of prisoners. Some prisoners, they were shackled. Some prisoners were behind the bars. So some prisoners, even though they are inside the bars, they were chained. That means they were very gross criminals, heinous crimes they must have done, dangerous criminals like that. Some may not be that much like that. So they were just under the prison like that. And some were even getting sometimes to be little freed to read some newspaper, to do some work. Different class of prisoners were there. So Prabhupada said, similarly, we are also imprisoned to different levels in this material world. Somebody is imprisoned much more, somebody is imprisoned lesser. So these three things, Prabhupada says, are shackles. Lust, greed, anger. They bind us to this material world, and they are lower modes of nature. Rajoguna, Tamoguna. There is a higher mode called as Sattva-guna, mode of goodness. Gradually, we have to come to the level of Sattva-guna, and even from Sattva-guna also, we have to cut that and go towards Shuddha Sattva-guna, the spiritual life. So then we may wonder how it is possible. Everyone is suffering from greed, lust, anger to different degrees, right? So, some people try, let us suppress them. We should try to suppress our anger. We should try to suppress our greed. Let us suppress and try to control our lust. Actually, it is not possible. These things cannot be suppressed, because now in the material world they are perverted. In the spiritual world also these desires are there, but these desires are pure desires. In the spiritual world also one is lusty, but one is not lusty for satisfying his senses. One is lusty for satisfying Krishna's senses. That is the only difference. Otherwise lust is there. Prabhupada says, of course, anger is not there. But in the material world also, anger can be utilized. See, when our desires are not satisfied, anger comes out. Correct? Let us say somebody is inhibiting your desire. You want to satisfy your desire and somebody stops your desire. Then anger comes out. So in the spiritual world, because everybody wants to serve Krishna, there is no question of inhibition. So there is no question of anger. But in the material world, even anger, it can be diverted in service of Krishna. In fact, Narottam Das Thakur says even dvesha, enviousness. In the material world, we are all envious of each other. If somebody is progressing, then we become envious of him, right? If somebody is having a better car than us, we become envious of him. Even enviousness can be diverted in service of the Lord. So what is required now is this lust which is giving us so much tormentation. The same lust can be actually applied in service of Krishna. Just yesterday on the board, I was reading that beautiful quote from Prabhupada. It's a very wonderful quote. Prabhupada said, one should be so lusty. So Prabhupada is saying, not just ordinary lust. One should be very lusty. One should be so lusty to serve Krishna. Just like we become lusty to have desired objects. Right? All of us young people, we all know how much we work hard to get our desired object. Whether it is girlfriend, whether it is good job, whether it is special bike, whether it is car, whatever. Right? We all work hard in that direction a lot to get our desired objects. Our sometimes whole life we spend to get our desired objects. Like I was reading once, Sachin Tendulkar is called as, sometimes people call him out of attachment to him, God of cricket. You find that. He was explaining, in one of his interviews, how from his very young childhood he had desired to become a cricketer. So, and then he worked hard day and night. He was saying, like people were working hard for so many things. He was saying that early in the morning he used to go to the ground, and from morning to nights, great penance, austerity he has taken. Lot of hard work has gone. It's not that he just went to ground and started hitting sixes. No, lot of hard work has gone behind that. Isn't it? We find them practicing day and night practically like that. So like one becomes lusty to have the desired object, Prabhupada says one should become lusty to serve Krishna. To serve Krishna means actually so many services are available. Imagine, to have lust to serve Krishna means Prabhupada's mercy, he has given us so many services. We should become burdened with, overwhelmed with service of Krishna. We should have no time to give to Maya. Actually, these are all very practical tips how to come out of lusty desires. Very practical tips. The moment you leave your mind vacant, we say that, what is that? Devil's workshop. It will become devil's workshop. Then it will start planning, thinking. Because every work begins by mind. All our desires, it all begins in the mind. Then it becomes transformed into activity. Animals don't act like that. Animals are whimsical. Our actions begins in the mind. First by thinking, contemplating, and then it becomes activities. So, if at the level of contemplation and thinking itself we can change and think and contemplate how to serve Krishna more and more and more, then it is possible. Our mind will become so much preoccupied, so much overwhelmed, that there will be no time for such kind of lusty desires. That is a very, very important thing. Another example Prabhupada gives is, same thing Prabhupada says. When the river becomes overwhelmed in sea, in the waves of the sea, then river becomes suppressed. Correct? We find when the river comes and merges into the sea, the river becomes overwhelmed with the water of sea itself. Similarly, our desire should become overpowered. It should become flooded with desires to serve Krishna. So our desires have to become flooded by serving Krishna. Those kinds of desire we should flood our mind with. Then it is possible that mind will not contemplate on lusty desires. Then Prabhupada is even further saying, just like we become lusty to have a desired object, similarly, we should be lusty to work for Krishna as a madman. We should be lusty to serve Krishna like a madman. Then it will be possible. And Prabhupada is saying, what is the meaning of that? I must do it. This is the utilization of lustiness. Narottam Das Thakur says, what this is called as Kama Krishna karma arpane. Kama can be satisfied by offering all your activities, your work, your desires, Krishna arpane. Then Kama can be satisfied. So, due to lust, Prabhupada says, we want many things for sense gratification. See how it will turn. Because of lust, we want many things for sense gratification. We want television, we want nice, mobile phone, we want nice bike, we want nice sports car, we want nice job, we want nice wife, good bungalow, right? So many things we want. Varieties of things we want. And purified consciousness means, Prabhupada says, we want everything for service of Krishna. Mobile also we should utilize for service of Krishna. Computers also we can utilize for service of Krishna. Everything, big buildings we can utilize for service of Krishna. So Prabhupada says this is the purification of our consciousness. We want everything for serving Krishna. Of course there are many more points to discuss, but I think we can discuss, keep it for the next classes. We'll stop here. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.